I learned the sound a marriage makes when it stops protecting you. It isn't a scream, it's a beep, clean, cheerful, and completely indifferent. At 5:12 a.m., the employee entrance of St. Briar Medical smelled like disinfectant, burnt coffee, and last night's rain tracked in on rubber soles. The lobby lights were dimmed to a night shift glow, the kind that makes everyone look a little haunted. I wasn't supposed to be there. Not anymore. I'd turned in my visitor sticker weeks ago. I told myself I didn't need reasons to come to the place that had swallowed my husband whole. But my body showed up anyway, running on that quiet instinct women learn when something in their home starts moving without them. I stood behind the vending machines near the staff corridor, my coat pulled tight, my hair tucked under a knit cap like I was hiding from the world. The air conditioner hummed. Somewhere down the hall, a cart rattled and a nurse laughed, tired and quick. The hospital was awake, but not fully alive. More like it was holding its breath. Then I saw the door. Employees only. A gray metal slab with a keypad and a badge scanner that glowed soft green when it liked you. That door mattered because the last time I'd been in this building, I'd been searching my purse for my badge, my old volunteer badge, the one Derek insisted I keep for emergencies. I remember the exact moment I realized it was gone. I was standing in my kitchen, sunlight on the counter, looking at a space inside my wallet that felt suddenly too clean. Like someone had carefully removed a piece of me and smoothed the edges. Derek had shrugged, barely looking up from his phone. "Probably fell out," he said. "I'll have security deactivate it." He didn't. I know that now. Because at 5:12 a.m., someone lifted a plastic card to the scanner, and the machine answered with a bright, obedient beep. Green light, access granted. And I wasn't the one holding it. My heart didn't slam the way it does in movies. It tightened. It went small and sharp, like it was trying to hide in my ribcage the way I was hiding behind cheap snack machines. For a second, I thought maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe it was another badge, another person, another life. Then the corridor door swung open, and my husband stepped out like he owned the air. Derek Turner, 53, tall, polished. The kind of man who still wore his work ID even on weekends because it made him feel important. Hospital operations manager. The guy who knew every lock, every camera, every blind spot. The guy who could get you a private room and a faster test if he liked you enough. He moved with that same smooth confidence he used to bring home with him. Like the world should make room. And right behind him came Tasha Caldwell. I'd only met her twice. Once at a charity gala, once in the elevator when she called my husband D like she'd earned a nickname. Nurse manager, 40-something, smart eyes, perfect posture. The kind of woman who didn't apologize for taking up space. She stepped into the hallway and laughed, soft and satisfied, like they'd just shared a joke that didn't belong to anyone else. Then Derek reached for her hand, not in a dramatic, romantic way. In the casual way, you reach for something you know won't pull away, like he'd done it 1,000 times already and didn't even think about how it looked. I tasted metal. I realized I'd bitten the inside of my cheek so hard I'd drawn blood. For half a second, my mind tried to protect me with excuses. Maybe they're working. Maybe there was an emergency. Maybe she needed help with staffing. Maybe. But I'd been married long enough to know the difference between work and whatever that was. Tasha leaned in close, her voice low, and Derek's mouth tilted at the corner in that private smile I used to think was for me. The one I used to chase across dinner tables and holiday parties. The one that made me feel like we were a team. I watched her fingers brush the front of his jacket, smoothing fabric like she had a right to. A small smear of lipstick was visible near his collar. Deep berry, not my color. Derek lifted his hand like he was going to fix it, then stopped, as if he suddenly remembered where cameras might be. He didn't look around, because he thought he'd already controlled the room. That's what hit me next. Not just that my husband was cheating, not just that he'd been living a double life, but that he was doing it in a place built on systems. Doors, logs, cameras, access codes, paper trails. A hospital doesn't run on trust, it runs on proof. And my husband, the man who used to remind me to shred junk mail, was walking out of a restricted corridor at dawn with a nurse in his shadow, using my missing badge like it was nothing. The air shifted around them. Derek's eyes flicked up, scanning the hallway the way a man scans weather, checking for storms, checking for trouble. When his gaze passed over the vending machines, my lungs stopped working. I pressed back into the dark gap between the machines and the wall, cold metal against my shoulder. He didn't see me. He saw what he expected to see. Nothing. Tasha said something I couldn't catch. Derek chuckled, quiet. Then he said, clear enough to slice through the hum of the building, I told you, it's handled. Handled. Like a problem was already disposed of. Like whatever they were doing had been planned and wrapped up with a bow. Tasha's answer was even softer, but I heard the edge under it. Just make sure nobody gets curious. Derek's voice sharpened a fraction, the way it does when he wants to sound calm, but he's actually warning you. They won't. I've got eyes everywhere. Eyes everywhere. I felt my stomach roll, because my badge wasn't the only thing that had gone missing lately. A folder Derek kept in his home office, gone for a day, then back in the exact same spot like it had never moved. A bank alert I asked him about that he waved off as a system glitch. A new cologne he claimed was from a vendor gift bag. A Saturday he said he spent at the plant, even though his car came home with fresh mud on the tires like he'd parked in a different lot. I'd been swallowing doubts like vitamins. Small, daily, necessary. Because the alternative was admitting my life was sick. Now, watching him walk with her, hearing him talk like this was routine, I understood something brutal. This wasn't a mistake. It was a structure. They were building something behind my back, and they were using the same skills he used to run a hospital, process, access, control, to dismantle my safety one quiet piece at a time. Derek and Tasha moved down the corridor toward the parking area. Their steps in sync, she tapped his arm, and he leaned in, head angled, listening. Intimate. Easy. Like their bodies had rehearsed closeness. They passed beneath a security camera mounted above the hallway corner. I watched the little red light. It was on. Then, as they walked under it, the camera shifted, just slightly, tilting away from the staff door, away from the vending machines, away from the angle that would have captured their faces clean. My throat went tight. That wasn't a glitch. That was a choice. A hand had adjusted it. A mind had planned it. I stared at that camera like it had personally betrayed me. And for a moment, I wanted to run. I wanted to burst out, call his name, throw truth at him like a brick. I wanted to see his face when the lie cracked. But another voice rose up inside me. Quiet, older, steadier. Not yet. Because men like Derek don't crumble when you accuse them. They twist. They deny. They make you look unstable. They use your pain like a weapon against you. And a hospital man? A systems man? He'd have a script ready before my tears even dried. So I stayed still. I let my shock harden into something sharper. Observation. Memory. Evidence. My hands were trembling, but my mind had gone cold. I watched where they went. I listened to the rhythm of their voices. I tracked the route Derek chose. Always the path with fewer cameras, always the corner where the light flickered and made faces harder to read. He was careful, but not careful enough. Because he used my badge, because he spoke out loud, because he believed nobody was watching. The staff door clicked shut behind them, and the corridor fell back into its sterile hush. I exhaled so slowly it felt like letting go of a secret I'd been carrying alone. My phone was in my coat pocket. I pulled it out and stared at the dark screen, my reflection faint in the glass. Eyes wide, mouth set. A woman caught between grief and fury. The kind of woman people underestimate because she doesn't scream. My thumb hovered over the record button. Too late for what just happened, but not too late for what would happen next. I opened my notes app instead. My fingers moved like they had their own intelligence. 5:12 a.m. Staff entrance. My badge used. Derek plus Tasha exiting restricted corridor. Camera above hallway corner tilted away. I typed it twice to make sure the words stayed real. Then I added the detail my body couldn't stop replaying. Lipstick on collar, handhold. Handled! Eyes everywhere. I tucked my phone away and stepped out from behind the vending machines, careful, slow. The floor felt too clean under my shoes, like the building had no idea it was hosting a crime. I walked to the door they'd used, keeping my face neutral in case any camera still faced me. The badge scanner glowed, waiting. I didn't have a card, but I didn't need one to understand what the system would know. Every beep leaves a record. Every access point keeps a timestamp. Every door tells a story if you know where to look. And for the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt something rise that wasn't just heartbreak. It was clarity. The kind that steadies your hands. The kind that turns a wife into an investigator. Because if Derek could use my badge like it belonged to him, it meant he thought I belonged to him too. And that was the one assumption I was about to destroy. Before we dive deeper into what I did next, before we talk about the logs, the missing supplies, and the way a hospital can hide 1,000 sins in plain sight, drop your location and what time you're watching right now. I want to know how far this story is traveling. And don't leave. Because the badge was only the first betrayal. The real one was what they were stealing, and how close they came to making me pay for it. When people ask how long you've known, they imagine betrayal arrives with fireworks. It doesn't. It arrives like a slow leak under the sink, quiet, persistent, and only obvious when the floor starts to warp. After that morning at St. Briar, I didn't go home and throw plates. I didn't text Derek a paragraph full of rage. I didn't call my mother or my girlfriends and announce that my husband was cheating with a nurse like it was a headline. I went home and made coffee. Not because I wasn't devastated, because I was. My hands shook so badly, I spilled grounds across the counter, and I stood there staring at the mess like it was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. But I understood something as the kettle hissed. If Derek was using my badge, if he was moving through restricted doors like he had nothing to fear, then this wasn't just an affair. It was a system. And systems don't break because you scream at them. They break because you document them. My name is Monique Turner. Mo, to the people who love me. I'm 50 years old, the age where you stop pretending you don't see what you see. The age where you've buried enough dreams to recognize the smell of fresh dirt. Derek and I had been married 27 years. Not the Instagram marriage, all matching outfits and weekend getaways. A real one. Bills, car repairs, parent-teacher nights. 2 kids grown enough to have opinions about everything and patience for nothing. A marriage built on routine and survival, the kind you assume will hold because it has held through worse. Derek always liked to say we were a team. I believed him. He came up the hard way, raised by a mother who worked doubles, learned early that respect is something you earn and sometimes steal. He wasn't a doctor, but he figured out how to become necessary. Hospital operations, supply chain, staffing, contracts. The invisible engine under the building. If the elevators worked, if the lights stayed on, if the nurses had gloves and masks, if the OR didn't run out of sutures, Derek wanted you to know his hand was somewhere in that success. He wore responsibility like cologne. And for a long time, it was attractive. Because I grew up with men who came home tired and empty-handed, men who promised and forgot, men who loved you but couldn't protect you from the world. Derek felt like the opposite. He felt like stability, like a man who could handle anything. He also had a habit, small, almost invisible at first. Control. He controlled the thermostat, the calendar, the way conversations ended, the money especially. If I asked questions, he said I was stressing for nothing. If I insisted, he'd smile and tell me, "Baby, I got it. You don't have to carry everything." It sounded like love. Now I hear it differently. I work in property management, mostly paperwork, mostly people who only call when something breaks. I'm good at it because I'm patient and I notice details. I remember who pays late, who lies about water damage, who smiles too sweet when they're hiding something. My job taught me that the truth is usually sitting right there in the smallest inconsistencies. You just have to stop rushing past them, Derek used to tease me about that. You always clockin' stuff, he'd say. You got a detective spirit. He had no idea how right he was. Tasha Caldwell was one of those details I clocked and tried to dismiss. The first time I saw her was at the Hospital Foundation Gala last fall. Derek insisted we go because it looks good for leadership. I wore a black dress that still fit, heels I regretted by the time we reached the first round of speeches. Derek was in his suit, moving through the room like he belonged in every conversation. That night, I noticed how people responded to him. Nurses nodded, administrators shook his hand a little too long. He loved that attention. He loved being the man who made the machine run. Tasha came up during the silent auction. She was wearing navy like it was a statement, hair smooth, earrings sharp enough to cut. Derek's face changed when he saw her. Just slightly. Just enough that if you weren't looking for it, you'd miss it. He brightened. Not the husband happy to introduce his wife kind of bright, the "this is mine too" kind. "Mo," he said, hand at my back like a claim. "This is Tasha Caldwell, nurse manager over MedSurg." Tasha's smile was perfect. Polite, professional, teeth and dimples. But her eyes didn't stay on my face. They flicked to Derek's, like they were checking in. "Nice to meet you," she said, and she shook my hand like she'd already decided something about me. I remember thinking, she's confident. She's used to being obeyed. And Derek liked women like that. Women who looked like they could keep up with him, challenge him, play the same game. At the time, I told myself it meant nothing. Derek worked with nurses all day. A good manager knows his team. That's what I said in my head while my stomach tightened for no reason I could explain. The second time I saw her was in the employee elevator, months later. I was there dropping off paperwork for a volunteer program before my badge disappeared. Derek stepped in, phone to his ear, mid-sentence. Tasha was already inside the elevator, leaning against the panel like she owned it. She looked at him and smirked. "You still workin'?" she asked. He lowered the phone slightly, and I saw the softness in his face. "Always." Then she looked at me and said, "Hey, Mo." Not Mrs. Turner, not Monique, just Mo, like she'd earned the right, like my name belonged in her mouth. Derek didn't correct her. He didn't even notice. That was when I felt the first real crack. Tiny, quiet. The sense that something was happening in my life without my permission. After that, the changes came in pieces. Derek started staying late more often. Not just the normal hospital runs 24/7 late, the kind where he came home with his tie loosened, eyes bright, phone face down on the table. He'd shower immediately, like the day was clinging to him. Sometimes he'd hum in the bathroom, soft, happy, careless. He stopped telling me stories about work. Derek used to come home and complain about staffing shortages, about supply vendors, about doctors who thought rules didn't apply to them. I'd listen and nod and tell him to eat his dinner. Then he stopped sharing anything real. He'd say, "Same old," and scroll his phone while I talked about my day. He became a man who existed next to me instead of with me. There were little things too. A new aftershave I didn't recognize. A charge on our account from a restaurant we'd never been to. A training meeting on a Saturday that ran through dinner. The way he started taking calls outside, even when the house was quiet. One night, I woke up and reached for him in the dark. He wasn't there. I found him downstairs at the kitchen table, laptop open, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in a whisper that didn't sound like work. When he saw me, he flinched, just a twitch of his shoulder, and the whisper turned into a normal voice like a switch. Yeah, Monday," he said loudly, then hung up too fast. "What's going on?" I asked, half asleep, trying to keep my tone light. He smiled at me like I was a child with a silly question. "Nothing. Go back to bed." I went. That was the part that makes me angry now. Not that he lied, but that I accepted it. Because I was tired. Because I didn't want to be the suspicious wife. Because women like me are taught that keeping peace is a virtue. A few weeks later, my badge went missing. I keep repeating that because it matters. Because it was the first physical proof that something in my life had been touched. Derek acted like it was no big deal. "I'll handle it," he said. And I believed him, because he always handled things. Except he didn't. He handled me. Not the problem. The same week, a letter came in the mail from our bank. Some routine notice about account access. I asked Derek about it over dinner. He didn't even look up from his plate. "System update," he said. "They send those to everybody." The next day, when I checked our joint account, I noticed a transfer that didn't match our usual pattern. Not huge, but enough to make my eyebrows lift. I asked him again. He kissed my forehead and said, "Mo, you worry too much." I got it. That phrase again. I got it. It used to soothe me. Now it sounded like a threat. By the time I saw Derek and Tasha walk out of that restricted corridor at dawn, my badge in her hand, the camera tilted away, Derek saying, "Eyes everywhere," I realized the truth had been building for months. I just hadn't wanted to name it. And here's the part people don't like when you tell a story like this. I didn't become brave overnight. I became practical. Because betrayal at 50 isn't like betrayal at 25. At 25, you cry and move back with your sister and start over with a new haircut. At 50, betrayal has paperwork attached. Mortgage, retirement, insurance. Adult kids who still call you for help even when they think they don't need you. At 50, you don't just lose a man, you risk losing the infrastructure of your life. That's why, the morning after the badge beeped green, I called Yvette Price. Yvette is my best friend and the only person I trust with my ugly truths. We met 20 years ago at a church fundraiser where the chicken was dry and the women were mean. Yvette wore red lipstick and looked like she had never begged anyone for anything in her life. She's 52 now, works in compliance for a logistics company, and her brain is built like a filing cabinet. Everything labeled, everything retrievable. When she answered, her voice was already sharp. "Mo, it's early." "I saw Derek," I said. Silence. Then softer. "Where?" "At the hospital, with a nurse. And he used my badge." Another pause, and I could hear the gears in her mind locking into place. "Okay," she said. "Breathe. Do not confront him." I wasn't going to. Good. Because you need to assume two things. One, he's been lying longer than you think. Two, he's not just cheating. My throat tightened. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Yvette said, voice low and steady, "men who cheat with their whole chest usually cheat with their whole life. Money, too. Access, too. Lies don't stay in one room." I stared at my kitchen wall, the paint slightly chipped near the window. I thought about Derek saying handled. I thought about eyes everywhere. I whispered, "I think you're right." "Then we're not crying today," Yvette said. "We're collecting." That's how part two of my life began. Not with rage, but with a plan. And that plan started with one simple question Yvette asked me that felt like a slap and a lifeline at the same time. "Mo, when was the last time you looked at every account with your own eyes?" Yvette came over that night with two phones and a look that said she'd already forgiven me for every time I'd defended Derek. She didn't hug me right away. She stood in my kitchen, took in the coffee cups on the counter, the mail I hadn't opened, the way my hands wouldn't stop moving. And she said, "Okay, start from the beginning. Slow." So I told her about the beep, the green light, Derek's hand on Tasha's fingers, the camera that turned its face away at the exact right second. I told her what he said. Handled, nobody gets curious, eyes everywhere. And while I spoke, Yvette's eyes stayed calm and hard, like she was translating my pain into a checklist. When I finished, she set her phones down and slid a notebook across the table. "We're not doing this from your feelings," she said. "We're doing this from facts." I swallowed. "I don't know where to start." "You do," she said. "You just don't want to." She opened her notebook and wrote two words in neat block letters. Access. Money. "Affairs leave patterns," she said. "So do thieves. Derek is both." The word thief made my stomach turn, but it also clicked into place with a cold, relieving logic. If my badge was used, there would be an access log. If supplies were moving, there would be inventory records. If money was leaving, There would be transfers. Derek could charm people into looking away, but systems didn't have feelings. Systems kept time. Yvette leaned forward. Tomorrow you don't do anything dramatic. You act normal. You eat breakfast. You ask about his day like always. And while he's busy thinking you're still the same wife who wants peace, you start learning his routines like they're your job. What about the nurse? I asked, and I hated how small my voice sounded. Tasha, Yvette said, like her name was already filed under threat. Yes, we'll get to her, but first, we get you control. Because right now, Mo, you're standing in the dark, waiting for their next move. That ends. The next morning, Derek kissed my cheek and told me he had an early meeting. His voice was easy, practiced. He wore the blue shirt I'd bought him for Christmas, and the silver watch he only wore when he wanted to feel expensive. When he left, he didn't take his coffee. He always took his coffee. I watched from the window as he walked to the car, phone already in his hand. He didn't glance back at the house. He didn't have to. He believed I was still inside, asleep in my own denial. The moment his taillights disappeared, my body tried to panic. My hands wanted to shake. My thoughts wanted to race in circles. Yvette had warned me about that too. Panic is wasted energy, she said. Use it. So I used it. I started with the accounts. Not the way Derek did it. Quick glances, confident clicks. I went slow. I opened every statement like I was reading a stranger's diary. I made a spreadsheet on my laptop and labeled columns. Date, amount, account, description, notes. The work felt almost insulting at first, like I was turning my marriage into bookkeeping. But after the third transfer, I couldn't explain. The insult turned into clarity. There were small moves, always under the amount that triggered automatic alerts. There were payments to a vendor name I didn't recognize. There were cash withdrawals I knew I hadn't made. And there was a pattern that sat under it all like a heartbeat. Transactions late at night or early morning when most people were asleep. Same time as the badge, Yvette said when I called her. That's not coincidence. That's a schedule. My mouth went dry. So what do I do? You document, she said. Screenshots, PDFs, download everything, and don't store it where he can find it. She walked me through setting up a secure drive, two-factor authentication, a password Derek would never guess because it wasn't a birthday or a sports team. Then she taught me redundancy. Assume he's watching, so you build backups. By noon, I had copies on an encrypted drive, a cloud folder with a name so boring it made me laugh, family recipes, and a small flash drive taped under the drawer in my nightstand. That afternoon, Yvette slid a plain manila folder across my table. Your courage, she said. Open it! Inside were printouts, articles about hospital procurement fraud, explanations of how supply theft works, common schemes, kickbacks, inflated invoices, ghost vendors, and how they get hidden in plain sight. She'd highlighted sentences in yellow like she was studying for an exam. I stared at the words ghost vendor and felt my skin go cold. Derek works in operations, I said. He has access to all of that. Exactly, Yvette said. And if he's sleeping with a nurse manager, that gives him a second set of hands inside the clinical side. 2 people, 2 badges, 2 approvals. That's not a fling, Mo. That's a partnership. That night, Derek came home with a lightness that made me want to scream. He tossed his keys into the bowl, asked what was for dinner, and put his phone face down without even thinking about it. Like he'd done it so many times, the movement had become muscle memory. I served him chicken and rice and asked, Busy day? He shrugged. Same old. Any trouble in supplies? I asked casually, like it was nothing. I heard on the news some hospitals are short on things again. His fork paused. Just a fraction. A tiny freeze most people wouldn't notice. No, he said too quickly. We're fine. I nodded like I believed him. I chewed my food like my mouth wasn't filled with ash. After dinner, he went to the shower. I waited until the water ran steady, then I picked up his phone. Not to read messages. Not yet. Yvette had told me that part mattered legally. and I wasn't going to ruin everything because I couldn't stand the suspense. I turned the phone over and looked at the case. There was a small smear of berry-colored lipstick near the camera lens. It wasn't mine. My fingers went numb. I took a photo of it with my own phone, close enough to capture the texture. Then I set his phone back exactly where it had been, face down, like nothing in my world had shifted. The next week became a quiet ballet. One Tuesday, Derek brought up the badge again, like he was cleaning up a loose thread. "You ever find that volunteer ID?" he asked, buttering toast like he wasn't asking about a key to a locked building. "No," I said. "Probably fell out of my purse." "You should replace it," he said, too casual. I kept my voice light. I already submitted the request. His knife stopped. "When?" "Last week," I said, and I made myself shrug. "They emailed me." He looked at me for a beat too long. Then he smiled. "Good. Less hassle." But later, when I went to the laundry room, I heard his voice in the garage. Low, clipped, angry, in a way he never used with me when he was trying to keep me calm. "She put in a request," he said. A pause. Then, "No, I don't know. Just check." My throat tightened. I backed away, quiet as a shadow, and went upstairs like I hadn't heard a thing. That night, I told Yvette. "They're checking on the badge replacement," she said immediately. "That means your request hit a system Derek can't fully control. He's scrambling." "So should I cancel it?" I asked. "No," she said. "You don't cancel normal. Normal is your cover, but you prepare." 2 days later, Derek tested me. I was at the kitchen table pretending to pay bills when he came home early, the front door clicking with a softness that made my blood run cold. I didn't jump. I didn't gasp. I turned like I was surprised, not startled. "Hey," he said. "Meeting got canceled." "That's nice," I replied, smiling. "You want leftovers?" He walked behind me, close enough that I could smell that floral note again. His hand rested on my shoulder, just for a second, just long enough to feel like he was weighing me. "What you working on?" he asked. "Bills," I said, tapping my pen against the paper like I'd been doing it for hours. He leaned in and glanced at my laptop screen. "Budget template, grocery categories, harmless." He hummed. "Look at you being responsible." I laughed lightly. "Don't get used to it." He kissed the top of my head, but his eyes didn't soften. He went straight to his office, shut the door, and made a call. That was the moment I realized Derek wasn't just cheating with a nurse. He was managing risk. He was running his household like he ran the hospital. Control the people, control the information, control the exits. And I was now a variable he didn't like. A week later, the badge office finally replied. They scheduled me for a quick photo and reissue. Friday, 9 a.m. "Do you want me to go with you?" Yvette asked. "No," I said. "If he's watching, I need to look normal. I can't look like I'm bracing for war." So Friday morning, I put on a cardigan, fixed my hair, and drove to St. Briar like I belonged there. The building looked the same, glass and gray stone, banners about community care, a lobby that smelled like disinfectant and coffee. But my body knew the difference. This place had swallowed pieces of my life. At the security desk, a young guard checked my name, smiled, and handed me a visitor sticker. The badge office was down a hallway I remembered too well. The overhead lights buzzed with that fluorescent hum that makes everything feel slightly unreal, like you're in a dream where the rules are wrong. The badge clerk, a woman with tired eyes and a kind voice, took my photo and typed my information into the system. I watched her fingers carefully. I watched the screen the way you watch a dealer shuffle cards. "Okay, Miss Turner," she said. "Just waiting for approval. It should be quick." Approval. The word made my stomach dip. Whose approval? Derek's? The clerk frowned slightly. "That's odd," she murmured. "What's odd?" I asked, keeping my tone light. "It says your credential is flagged," she said, blinking at the screen. "For unusual access." My heart thudded. Unusual access? She hesitated, then looked at me with sympathy. It happens sometimes. Lost badge, somebody uses it. I'll call my supervisor. I nodded, swallowing hard, and tried not to look like a woman hearing her life confirmed by a computer. While she stepped away, I felt the hairs on my arms lift. Someone was watching. I turned my head slightly and saw Tasha Caldwell at the end of the hall. She wasn't coming toward me. She was standing still, phone in her hand, eyes locked on my face. Her expression was controlled, but there was a flicker of something sharp in it. Annoyance, maybe, or recognition. She knew why I was here. My mouth went dry. I forced myself to smile, like she'd surprised me in the grocery store. Tasha, I said warmly. Hey! She walked closer, heels clicking softly. Monique, what brings you here? Her tone was sweet, her eyes weren't. Replacing my volunteer badge, I said. I lose everything these days. She laughed lightly. Oh, I know the feeling. Hospitals eat things. We stood there in a hallway that felt too bright, too quiet. Behind her, a door opened, and a cart rolled by, squeaking. The normal sounds were suddenly loud. Tasha's gaze flicked to the badge clerk's desk, then back to me. You come here often? Not lately, I said. Just paperwork. Community stuff. Derek still helping you with that? She asked, and her smile sharpened around the edges. There it was again, the way she spoke my husband's name like it belonged to her mouth. He's busy, I said lightly. You know how he is. Tasha's eyes narrowed just a hair. Yeah, she said. I know. The clerk returned with her supervisor, and the supervisor's face changed when he saw Tasha standing beside me. A quick shift, a little stiffening in the shoulders. He cleared his throat. Ms. Turner, there's a hold on reissuing your credential until we review activity. It's standard. Standard, I repeated, letting the word roll out like it didn't matter. Tasha's phone buzzed. She glanced down, then back at me. Well, she said, hope that gets sorted. Me too, I replied. She walked away, but not before she leaned in slightly and whispered, Be careful what you go digging for. Then she was gone, disappearing into the flow of staff like she'd never been there at all. I stood frozen for a beat, my chest tight. The supervisor apologized again, explaining process, offering a number to call. I thanked him politely because politeness is armor people don't recognize as a weapon. In my car, I shook so hard I had to sit with both hands on the steering wheel until the tremors eased. That was the first time Tasha threatened me directly, and it changed the temperature of everything. Yvette was furious when I told her. That means she's scared, she said. Good. Fear makes people reckless. It also makes them mean, I whispered. Yvette's voice softened. I know. That's why we tighten security. You don't go anywhere alone at night. You keep your phone charged. You tell your sister a code word. And you stop underestimating what Derek might do to protect himself. I didn't want to hear that, but I did. Because the grief shifted. Not into healing, into something colder. Because I understood then, this wasn't only a husband cheating with a nurse. This was a hidden relationship at work that had turned into a machine. Sex, money, access, leverage. And the machine didn't care who it crushed. If I wanted my life back, I couldn't just catch him. I had to dismantle him. Derek left early. I left a little later. I learned the timing of his steps, the rhythm of his lies. He went to the hospital on Tuesdays before sunrise. He stayed late on Thursdays, claiming staff meetings. He ran errands on Saturday afternoons, always gone exactly long enough to make dinner cold. Yvette taught me how to track without stalking. You're not chasing him, she said. You're mapping him. We created a shared timeline document and filled it with details. When he left, when he returned, what he wore, what he said. I hated how clinical it felt, but I hated more how effective it was. Lies are loud when you stop calling them love. The first real break came from someone neither Derek nor Tasha paid attention to. Her name was Keisha Lane, and she worked in materials management at St. Briar. Yvette found her through a chain of women who talk in whispers and still get things done. I met Keisha at a coffee shop across from the hospital on a Wednesday afternoon. She sat with her arms crossed, eyes tired but sharp. "You know this is dangerous, right?" she said. "I know," I replied, and it was the truest thing I'd said in months. Keisha leaned in slightly. "Stuff's been walking out. Not normal shrinkage, real product, high-dollar items, catheters, specialty implants, sealed boxes that shouldn't move without paperwork." My skin prickled. "How?" "After hours," she said. "Early mornings, through staff doors not loading docs, like somebody didn't want cameras catching the wrong angles." "And the logs?" I asked. Keisha's eyes held mine. "Badge entries that don't match schedules. I flagged it once. Supervisor told me to mind my business." "Who's your supervisor?" I asked, already knowing. "Derek's guy," she said. The world tilted. I forced myself to breathe. "What about Tasha Caldwell?" I asked. Keisha's mouth pressed into a hard line. "She signs off on a lot. She's been around supplies more than she should be. That's all I'm gonna say." Before she left, she scribbled a few item codes on a napkin and slid it across the table. "Start there," she said. "And don't say my name." That night, I learned a new kind of horror: how expensive routine supplies can be, and how easy it is to drain a system one barcode at a time. How a hospital affair scandal can be about more than sex. It can be about access. Over the next 2 weeks, I tightened my net without changing my face. I bought a small voice recorder online and hid it inside a decorative candle in the hallway near Derek's office. Yvette insisted we keep it simple. "Just clear audio," she said, "and only in shared spaces." I placed my phone on the counter one evening and casually mentioned, "Did you ever deactivate my badge?" Derek didn't look up. "Yeah," he said. I let a small pause hang. "So it shouldn't work anywhere?" His eyes flicked to mine. He smiled too fast. "Mo, why are you thinking about that?" I shrugged. "Just popped in my head." He laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. "It's fine. Stop worrying." Later that week, the candle recorder caught Derek's voice when he thought he was alone in his office. "I told you," he said, low and irritated. "Don't text me when I'm home." A woman's voice answered, sharp, confident. "Then stop leaving your mess for me." My throat closed. I knew that voice. "Tasha." Derek exhaled like he was trying to stay calm. "It's not a mess. It's handled." "What about the audit?" Tasha snapped. My blood ran cold. I leaned closer to my laptop, headphones tight. "There's no audit," Derek said. "Stop letting paranoia make you sloppy." "I'm not paranoid," she said. "I'm smart. And your wife," the word wife hit the air like a slap. Derek cut her off. "She's not paying attention. She's Mo." He said my name the way you say a furniture brand. Familiar, harmless, easy to ignore. Tasha laughed softly. "Everybody's paying attention when money starts disappearing." Derek's voice hardened. "It's not disappearing, it's moving. And nobody can tie it back to us if you do your part." Silence. Then Tasha said, "I'm doing my part. I'm the reason this works." Derek's reply was quieter. "Then keep working." The call ended. I sat at my desk with tears on my face and didn't make a sound. Because if I made a sound, I might have turned back into the woman who begged for love. And I wasn't that woman anymore. I was the woman with a timeline, a folder, and a secret phone evidence file that sounded like a confession. The next piece was visual. On a Thursday, Derek told me he had to check on a vendor issue. He left at 7:40 p.m., wearing a jacket that smelled like cedar and something floral underneath. I smiled, wished him luck, and waited 10 minutes before I followed. Not to confront, to confirm. I parked 2 rows behind Derek's car in the employee lot and watched as the hospital glowed in the distance like a ship at sea. At 8:13 p.m., Tasha walked out of the staff entrance. She wasn't in scrubs. She wore black pants and a cream sweater. hoop earrings catching the light. Derek met her halfway and handed her a folder. She tucked it under her arm, and they spoke for 3 minutes. No romance, just coordination. My dash cam captured it all. Cheating husband caught, the internet would call it. But what I saw wasn't just cheating, it was business. And I knew, with a certainty that made my vision sharpen, that medical supply fraud wasn't a theory. It was happening inside my husband's hands. The more evidence I gathered, the more Derek changed. He became attentive in a way that felt like surveillance. He asked what I did during the day. He complimented my cooking. He touched my shoulder when he passed behind me, like he was checking I was still there. One night he said, "You've been quiet lately." I kept my eyes on the sink. "Just tired." He watched me for a long moment. I could feel it on the back of my neck. "Everything okay?" he asked. The words were gentle. The intent wasn't. I turned, smiled, and gave him the version of me he expected. "Yeah, just life." He nodded slowly, then kissed my forehead. "Don't let your mind run." After he went to bed, I called Yvette in my closet with the door closed. "He's watching me," I whispered. "I know," Yvette said. "That means we're close." Close to danger, close to freedom, close to losing everything. Yvette didn't let my fear speak. "We need someone official," she said. "Someone who knows the rules. Someone who can tell you how to keep this clean." That's how Detective Andre Collins entered my story. He wasn't a dramatic movie detective. He was a former investigator who now worked with internal compliance cases. Quiet, methodical, impossible to charm. Yvette knew him through her network. We met in a parking lot outside a grocery store. Andre looked at the copies I brought. Statements, screenshots, stills, the badge detail, and his eyes sharpened. "If he used your credential," he said, "that's access fraud. It can trigger an investigation even without the money." "I care about what he's doing," I said. "Then you care about procedure," Andre replied. "If you collect evidence the wrong way, it becomes useless. Or worse, it exposes you." "Expose me how?" "Retaliation," he said simply. "Men who steal and cheat don't usually accept consequences quietly." The sentence landed like a weight. Andre continued. "Your recordings. Where are they from?" "Shared spaces, public areas, my car." He nodded. "Good. Do not put anything where there's a clear expectation of privacy. Next, corroboration, badge logs, inventory reports, vendor invoices. You need the hospital's system to convict him, not just your suspicion." "So how do I get that?" I asked. "You don't," Andre said. "Not directly. That's where audits come in." Audit. The word made my pulse jump, because Tasha had said it on the recording like it was a knife. "If compliance gets an anonymous tip with enough specificity," Andre said, "they can pull logs. If they find irregularities, it escalates. And once it escalates, Derek loses control of the narrative." I wrote the anonymous tip like a maintenance request. Specific, factual, unemotional. Door numbers Keisha mentioned. Time ranges. Item codes. Badge activity outside scheduled hours. Vendor payments that didn't match usage. No names, no wife. Only patterns, access anomalies, and inventory discrepancies. I printed it at the library, mailed it from a box across town, and let it go. The week after, the hospital shifted. Not loudly, not officially. But like the air pressure changed before a storm, Derek became tense. He started making calls in the garage with the door shut. He came home earlier, then left again. Tasha's name appeared more often in his mouth, disguised as casual work talk. 2 days later, Keisha texted Yvette a single line. They pulled the logs. My hands went cold when Yvette told me. "They're moving," she said. "Compliance is sniffing around. Your tip worked." That night, the candle recorder captured Derek again, harder this time. "Why are they looking at doors?" he snapped. Tasha's voice tight with annoyance. "Because somebody talked." "Who?" Derek demanded. Silence. Then Tasha said, "Not me." Derek exhaled. "Then keep your people quiet." My people? She hissed. Don't talk to me like I'm your employee. You are if you want your cut, Derek said. And there it was, the crack where love should have been. Tasha went quiet. Then she said, You promised this would be clean. It is clean, Derek replied. It's just inconvenient. Inconvenient? Tasha's laugh was sharp. You mean dangerous? Derek's voice lowered. Nobody's going to tie this to us. And my wife. He paused, and my whole body locked. My wife is not a factor, he finished. Not a factor. I sat at my desk with tears on my face and didn't make a sound. Because if I made a sound, I might have turned back into the woman who begged for love. And I wasn't that woman anymore. I was the woman with a timeline, a folder, and an audit rolling toward the truth like thunder. By the end of that week, Andre called Yvette, and Yvette called me. Compliance is scheduling a formal inventory review, she said. It's happening. My throat closed. When? Soon, she said. And Derek's going to try to control it. He'll blame staff, he'll pressure people, he'll sweet-talk whoever he can. And Tasha? I asked. Yvette's voice was steady. Tasha will do what ambitious people do when the ship tilts. She'll save herself. I stared at my reflection in the dark window. 50 years old, eyes tired, jaw set. Then I'll do what women like us do when men think we'll stay quiet, I said. What's that? Yvette asked. I swallowed the last of my fear and let the words come out clean. We document, we outlast, and we make sure the story ends in daylight. That weekend, Derek tried to sit me down and go over finances, like he'd promised. I smiled and said, Not today. I have a headache. His eyes narrowed. Mo. I touched his wrist gently, the way a wife touches a husband to soothe him. Tomorrow, I said. I promise. He held my gaze for a long moment, then let it go. But I knew. He was cornered enough to watch me with new eyes, and I was close enough to smell the panic under his cologne. The hospital had started moving on its own, and Derek's control, the thing he loved more than me, was slipping. That's when I understood what betrayal really does. It doesn't just break your heart. It teaches you where the weak points are. And once you see them, you can't unsee them. Not ever again. The first sign the audit was real came in an email Derek tried to hide with his body. He got home on a Monday evening, later than usual, shoulders tight, like he'd been carrying something fragile all day. He didn't kiss me right away. He didn't ask about dinner. He walked straight past the living room, phone in his hand, eyes flicking toward the hallway, like he was checking whether the house had changed while he was gone. Then he remembered I was sitting there. Hey, he said, forcing warmth. Long day. I nodded like I hadn't been counting minutes. You want to eat? Not hungry, he said, already moving. Shower first. His phone buzzed. He glanced down, and the color drained from his face before he could stop it. He turned the screen away, thumb flying, deleted, archived, something, then looked at me and smiled too hard. Work stuff, he said. I smiled back, soft and harmless. Of course. Upstairs, water ran. Downstairs, I opened my notes like I was checking a recipe. Time, 7:18 p.m. Reaction to email, immediate. Face change, deletion, small facts, the kind that turn into a rope when you braid them together. Yvette called 10 minutes later. They scheduled it, she said. My chest tightened. When? Wednesday morning. Inventory review plus badge access pull. Compliance and external auditors. My mouth went dry. External? That's what makes it real, she said. Once outsiders touch it, Derek can't charm it. And Tasha? I whispered. Already moving, Yvette said. Keisha says she's been in materials all weekend checking counts. That means she's cleaning. Cleaning. Like Derek's shower. Like their whole life was something that could be scrubbed back into innocence. What do I do? I asked. You do nothing new, Yvette said. Routine is your cover. You prepare for what happens when the building starts shaking. That night, Derek came downstairs in sweatpants, face composed again. He poured water and leaned on the counter like he had all the time in the world. "You okay?" he asked, studying me. "Just tired." "You've been tired a lot." "Life," I said lightly. He watched me, then said, "We should go over our accounts, make sure everything's lined up." There it was, pressure disguised as responsibility. "Sure," I said. "This weekend?" His jaw tightened. "Why not tonight?" I laughed softly. "It's Monday. Let me breathe." His smile didn't move. "It won't take long." "Tomorrow," I said, touching his forearm as if I was reassuring him. "I promise." He nodded, slow. "Tomorrow." I didn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., he got up and went to his office. I didn't follow him. My candle recorder was already there, collecting the truth for me. The next afternoon, Yvette texted, "Andre wants to see you, 4:30, neutral spot." Detective Andre Collins met me at a quiet diner booth and got straight to it. "Compliance wants advisory support," he said. "This audit is moving." I handed him a controlled slice, badge dates, 2 unexplained transfers, a still from my dash cam, and the audio where Derek said, "You are if you want your cut." Andre's eyes narrowed. "That can hold up if you keep it clean." He gave me 3 rules. Don't confront, don't tip him off, and don't become a different wife overnight. Consistency keeps you safe. Before I left, he added, "Freeze your credit and lock down passwords, quietly. Assume he'll reach for anything that buys him time." When I got home, Derek was on the phone in the garage, voice sharp enough to cut through the door. "Fix it," he snapped. Then he noticed me and switched tones like flipping a light. I came in louder than necessary, keys bright, voice sweet. "Hey, baby?" He walked in smiling, like he hadn't been spitting venom seconds before. "How was work?" "Busy," I said. "Same as always." He kissed my cheek. It felt like a search. "You still good for tonight?" he asked. "Going over accounts?" "Sure." He opened his laptop at the dining table like he was teaching a class. "See?" he said, pointing at numbers. "Everything's fine." I nodded. I asked small, trusting wife questions. He answered smoothly, too smoothly, like he'd rehearsed. Then he slid the screen toward me. "Log in from your side, too, just to verify." My stomach dropped. That wasn't normal. That was a test. "My password's saved on my phone," I said. "Go get it." I walked to the kitchen, opened a drawer I didn't need, breathed through my nose, slow, then returned and logged in without hesitation. I didn't flinch at anything. I smiled at the screen like it was boring. "Looks fine," I said. Relief loosened him. Then he pushed further, unable to resist. "With everything going on at the hospital, we might need to shift some funds around," he said. "Just temporarily." Confession wrapped in careful language. "Our money's safe, Derek," I replied. "Is it not?" A tight smile. "It's safe. I just like being prepared." After he fell asleep, I listened to the candle recorder. Derek, low and urgent. "Wednesday is a problem, Tasha." "Then make it not a problem." Derek. "They're pulling logs, Tasha." "You said you controlled access." Derek. "I do. But if they go back far enough," Tasha. "Then we need a fall guy." My blood chilled. Derek. "Not me, Tasha." "Not me either." A heavy pause. Derek. "Keisha." Tasha. "She's been asking questions." Derek. "Then she's stupid." Tasha. "Stupid people talk." Derek's voice sharpened. "Handle it." Handle it. His favorite word, the one he used like a spell. I called Yvette in the dark. "They're going to blame Keisha." "We warn her," Yvette said. "If she takes the fall, we become complicit." Keisha called in sick Wednesday with a family emergency. She stayed off-site, safe for now. Wednesday arrived like a knife. He kissed me goodbye like it was ordinary. "Big day," he said. "At the hospital?" I asked lightly. Meetings, he replied. By midday, Yvette's updates came in quick pulses. They're in materials. Auditors present. They pulled badge logs. Your old credential hits. Compliance wants camera footage. The next morning, Derek tried a different angle. He didn't start with anger. He started with charm. He made pancakes, real ones, not the frozen kind, like we were back in our first apartment, when money was tight and love was the only thing that felt unlimited. He set a plate in front of me and said, "I know I've been distracted. I don't want you feeling left out." It would have been sweet if it hadn't been strategic. I thanked him, took a bite, and let my face soften just enough to keep him comfortable. Under the table, my toes curled inside my slippers to keep my body from giving me away. He watched me chew. "You remember Cheryl from accounting?" he asked. I nodded. "The one with the loud laugh?" "Yeah," he said, smiling. "She told me you called the hospital last week asking about badge stuff." My pulse jumped, but my expression stayed mild. "I did. I told you. Replacement request." He nodded, but his eyes stayed sharp. "Cheryl said the security office mentioned unusual activity on your old credential. That's not normal." I lifted my eyebrows like I was surprised. "If someone stole it, that makes sense." Derek's smile twitched. "Nobody stole it." I let silence stretch, then shrugged. "Then somebody used it. Either way, it wasn't me." He stared at me, measuring. Then he reached across the table and took my hand. "Mo," he said, voice low, almost tender. "You know I'd never let anything hurt you." The words used to be a blanket. Now they sounded like a warning wrapped in velvet. I squeezed his hand back. "I know." He exhaled like he'd won a small battle. "Good. Because things at work are messy. People are looking for someone to blame." There it was again. Blame, like a scent. "Who?" I asked, carefully casual. "Doesn't matter," he said quickly. "I just need you to trust me. If anybody calls, if anybody asks questions, you tell them you don't know anything. You hear me?" I nodded, gentle. "Okay." He kissed my knuckles, like he was sealing a deal. After he left for work, I called my sister Renee and gave her the code word Yvette had insisted on. Magnolia. If I ever texted it, Renee was to call the police and come to my house without asking questions. Renee laughed at first, then heard my tone and went quiet. "You sure you're okay?" she asked. "I'm prepared," I said. That's all. An hour later, Derek called me from his office. "Hey," he said, tone light. "Can you do me a favor?" "What kind?" I asked. "I need you to swing by the bank and sign something," he said. "Just a form. Routine. They need your ink." My stomach dipped. "What form?" "An authorization," he said too quickly. "To move some funds into a safer account. Just temporary." A safer account. A prettier name for the same theft. "I can't today," I said. "I'm at work late." A pause. Then he laughed. Friendly. "Okay, tomorrow." When he hung up, I wrote it down. Time. Request. The way his voice tightened on authorization. That evening, I drove past St. Briar without going in. I parked on a side street and watched the hospital's back entrance through my windshield. Cars came and went, headlights sliding across the pavement. I told myself I was only confirming what I already knew. Derek and Tasha had routines. At 8:41 p.m., Tasha appeared, walking fast, phone to her ear. Derek followed a minute later, not close enough to look like a couple, but close enough to move like a unit. They didn't kiss. They didn't smile. They looked like two people carrying a secret that had gotten heavier. Tasha stopped beside a trash bin, opened a folder, and ripped out a sheet. She tore it again, then shoved the pieces down into the bag like paper could drown the truth. Derek watched, jaw tight. Then he leaned in and said something I couldn't hear, but I saw Tasha's reaction. A sharp shake of her head, a quick glance around, a hand slicing the air as if she was saying, "No, not that." Derek grabbed her wrist, hard enough that her shoulders jerked, and she yanked away. The fight was silent, but it was violent in its control. When they separated, Tasha walked off first, spine stiff. Derek followed, slower, like a man who'd just realized his partner wasn't loyal to him, only to herself. I drove home with my hands steady and my mouth full of iron. Because that was the other danger Yvette hadn't had to explain. When co-conspirators start to crack, they don't just turn on each other. They look for someone softer to sacrifice. And Derek knew exactly who people thought was soft. At 3:30 p.m., Derek came home early. Too early. He walked in trying to look normal and failing. His smile flickered. His eyes were too bright. "Hey," he said. "You're home," I replied. "Audit confirmed some weird access," he said, voice casual. "Probably a stolen badge. Annoying." I let my face show mild concern. "Audit?" He froze for half a beat. "Just routine. Always checking." I nodded. "That sounds stressful." He stepped closer, voice dropping. "Mo, did you tell anybody anything about my work?" The question landed heavy in the air. I kept my expression soft, confused, slightly offended, not dramatic. "Why would I?" His eyes searched my face like a ledger. "Just asking. People talk." "Not me," I said, then shrugged like it was nothing. He nodded slowly, like he'd decided something. "And that badge replacement," he added, too casual. "Did you ever follow up?" "Trap?" "No," I said. "I got busy. It's not a big deal." Relief flashed across his face. Then it disappeared. Good. That night, he didn't sleep. He paced and made calls and typed until the room smelled like stress. I pretended to doze and listened to the tiny clicks and sighs. At 2:22 a.m., he whispered into his phone, "If this hits the board, we're done." Tasha's voice on speaker, cold. "Then we don't let it hit the board." "How?" Derek asked. "We give them something else. A distraction." "Like what?" "Like your wife," she said. My eyes opened in the dark, but my breathing stayed slow. Derek went quiet. "Leave her out of it." Tasha laughed softly. "You already did." Then she said it, slow and lethal. "If you don't control her, she'll control you." The call ended, and Derek sat on the edge of the bed with his head in his hands like he'd finally realized what he'd been feeding. I stared at the ceiling and felt my fear sharpen into something clean. Because they had named me, not as a wife, as a problem. And when you become a problem to people like that, you either disappear or you become the storm. The morning I decided to end it, Derek kissed me like a man saying goodbye to a version of me he no longer recognized. His lips were warm, his hands were steady, his voice was careful. "I've got meetings all day," he said, tightening his tie in the mirror. "Don't stress yourself out, okay?" I smiled at his reflection. "I won't." He left the house smelling like cedar, confidence, and the lie he'd practiced so long it had become his second skin. The door clicked shut. The air in the hallway settled, and for a moment, the silence felt like a held breath right before a storm breaks. I didn't cry, not then. I opened the lockbox behind the false panel in my closet, the one Yvette had helped me install the week after Tasha's hallway warning. Inside were printed bank statements, screenshots of transfers, a flash drive, and the little recorder I'd hidden in the candle. The pieces of my marriage, flattened into evidence. I placed everything in a neat stack on my dining table, the way people set out dishes for guests. Only these guests were the consequences. Yvette arrived first. She didn't knock softly. She knocked like she meant business, then walked in with a laptop bag and a face set in steel. "You ready?" she asked. I nodded. "I've never been more ready." Andre Collins arrived next. Not in uniform, he wasn't that kind of detective, but in a dark jacket with a folder under his arm and eyes that didn't get distracted by emotion. He set his folder down and said, "Compliance confirmed irregular vendor payments. They pulled badge logs. Your credential shows multiple access entries after you reported it missing." My throat tightened, but my voice stayed calm. "Can they tie it to Derek?" Andre's eyes narrowed. They can if they have corroboration. That's why we're here. We went through everything, one clean line at a time. Badge timestamps matched Derek's early meetings. The dash cam stills showed handoffs. The candle recorder captured Derek saying, "You're cut." The bank transfers traced a pattern that didn't belong to any household budget. It was more than betrayal. It was strategy. And now it was a case. At noon, Yvette's phone buzzed. She read the message and looked up at me. "They scheduled the board review," she said. "Tonight, 6 p.m., conference room B. Derek and Tasha have to attend." My heart didn't pound anymore. It just steadied, like my body had been waiting for an exit ramp. "Then we go," I said. The hospital's executive wing was too quiet, like money always is. The hallway carpet swallowed footsteps. The glass walls reflected faces back at themselves. I walked beside Yvette and Andre with my shoulders square, carrying a slim folder that held the version of my life Derek couldn't rewrite. When we reached the conference room, the door was already half open. Inside, board members sat with tablets and paper cups of coffee. Their expressions ranged from bored to wary. People who'd been told something serious was coming, but hadn't been told how ugly it would be. Derek was at the far end of the table. He looked up when I entered. His face didn't change at first. Then his eyes widened just slightly, like he'd seen a ghost step into a room with fluorescent lighting. Tasha sat beside him, posture perfect, lips pressed into a line. Her gaze flicked from me to Andre to Yvette, and something in her expression tightened. Recognition and calculation in the same breath. I took my seat across from them without asking permission. Andre set his folder down and nodded to the chairperson. "Thank you for allowing us to present corroborating material," he said. Derek's voice cut in, sharp. "This is inappropriate. My wife has nothing to do with hospital operations." I looked at him and smiled. Small, calm, almost pitying. "That's the first true thing you've said in months." A murmur rippled around the table. Derek's jaw tightened. Andre began with the hospital's side. Inventory discrepancies, irregular vendor invoices, access logs showing after-hours entry through staff doors. No accusations yet, just facts. Then he turned to me. "Ms. Turner has additional corroboration." I slid my folder forward. My hand didn't shake. Inside were printed screenshots of bank transfers, the badge reissue hold notice, and a time-stamped photo of Derek's phone case with berry lipstick at the camera lens. Small details, deadly when aligned. Derek stared at the papers like they were written in another language. Tasha's fingers twitched near her water cup. The chairperson frowned. "Ms. Turner, how did you obtain this?" "Legally," Andre said before I could answer, calm and precise. "Shared space recordings and personal financial documentation. Nothing from restricted systems." Derek tried to laugh. It came out thin. This is a personal matter. My marriage has nothing to do with..." Yvette leaned forward. "Your marriage isn't the issue. Your patterns are." Andre played a short audio clip. Derek's voice filled the room, unmistakable. "You are if you want your cut." Tasha's face went pale. The room went silent in a way that felt like gravity. Derek's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "That's out of context." "Context is irrelevant," I said softly, the words tasting like ice. "Facts speak for themselves." I watched him then, not with hatred, not with longing, but with clarity. The man who used to call me baby and fix leaky faucets had been siphoning money, moving supplies, and using my trust like a tool, and he still believed he could talk his way out. Tasha finally spoke. "This is a witch hunt," she said, voice tight. "You're targeting us because you used my badge," I interrupted, calm as a locked door. "And because you threatened me in a hallway when you realized the system noticed." Her eyes flashed. "Prove it." I slid another sheet across the table. The badge office note, credential flagged for unusual access, date stamped, official. "You didn't just betray me," I said, voice low but steady. "You weaponized my identity. You stole more than a marriage. You stole security." Derek's face reddened. Mo, stop. This is exactly what it is, I replied. You thought silence meant ignorance. You thought being polite meant being blind. I looked around the table, letting the room see the truth without theatrics. I'm not here to scream, I continued. I'm here to end the story you wrote behind my back. Andre finished the presentation like a surgeon closing an incision. He linked vendor payments to item codes Keisha had provided. He correlated badge entries with missing supplies. He outlined the immediate steps: suspension of access, internal investigation, referral for legal review. By the time he was done, Derek's shoulders had sagged. The confidence had leaked out of him like air. Tasha's posture finally cracked. She avoided my eyes. The chairperson spoke, voice heavy. Mr. Turner, Ms. Caldwell, your access is suspended effective immediately. This matter will be referred to counsel and the appropriate authorities. Derek pushed back his chair too fast, legs scraping. This is unbelievable. I stood slowly, meeting his gaze. No, I said, calm as truth. This is documented. His eyes searched mine for the old Mo, the woman who apologized first, the woman who softened his edges. He didn't find her, because she was gone. As we walked out, I felt the strange, quiet aftermath of victory. Not joy, not celebration, just breath. Deep and real, like I'd been underwater too long. Outside, the evening air was cool. The hospital lights glowed behind us, indifferent as ever. Yvette squeezed my hand. You did it, she said. I shook my head slightly, feeling the weight settle into something steady. I started it, I replied. Now I rebuild. That night in my apartment, I changed every password, froze every account, and packed Derek's remaining clothes into boxes without looking at them too long. Before I went to bed, I stood in my closet and touched the spot where the lockbox used to hide, now empty because it had served its purpose. I thought about the sound of that badge scanner, that bright, obedient beep, how it had been the beginning of my end and the beginning of my return. And if you're watching this right now, wherever you are, remember what I learned too late and just in time. Silence isn't weakness. Not when it's paired with preparation, not when it's backed by proof, not when it's the quiet before you take your life back. If this story hit you anywhere deep, subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Like the video if you believe truth matters more than comfort. And tell me in the comments, what would you do if the person you trusted most tried to steal your future in the dark?